Hey there. I want to start by apologizing for my face and my eyebrows. I'm busy today. It's Saturday night, the 13th of June, and this is the year of our Lord, 2020. And Rashard Brooks was murdered by the Atlanta police yesterday. The interstate got shut down here in Atlanta, the undisputed capital of Black America. They burned the Wendy's where it happened. And that's kind of what's happening right now. And I've definitely have a bunch of friends out there, and I'm really hoping. I don't believe in God, I don't pray, but I'm hoping and kind of praying for everybody's safety. I think a lot of people are going to go to jail tonight. I hope that can happen without anybody getting badly hurt. And the topic of this video is white fragility, a form of it that I have been encountering recently. I'm going to talk about three, and first of all, I hate referring to people as white. So I think a much more accurate way to refer to someone is as a person of European descent. And the three exemplars that I'm going to give right now are people of European descent. I agree with James Baldwin that white isn't a thing that you are, it's a thing that you believe. And these three people definitely believe it. More than they know. So I guess I'll take them kind of I'll just in reverse order in a way. First person I'm going to talk about is a guy named Brett Weinstein. This is a man, he's an evolutionary biologist by training and by profession. And he, until like a couple of years ago, he taught biology at Evergreen State College in Washington State. And there's a really controversial event that took place. He was basically driven from campus and couldn't teach there anymore. And it's a complicated enough thing that I'm not even going to try to explain it. What I will say is that you'll hear a couple different sort of major versions of what happened, and I think they're both oversimplified. Is my personal opinion, not that matters. But, he basically was made to leave. He was accused of being white supremacist. And I would say that he certainly doesn't understand himself that way. I would say that based on all of his commentary, well, I'll back up for a second before I get into that and say that I've been listening to him in the last few months because he has been talking a lot about this COVID thing. And his perspective as an evolutionary biologist has been pretty interesting and informative, and he's been kind of ahead of where the news has gone. So he was a good person to listen to. He has an interesting story, and I like he typically sort of does these tag team podcasts with his wife. She's also an evolutionary biologist. I really like her. I find her find them personable and personally likable. But I do think that he and his wife, Heather Hying, are exponents of white supremacy in ways that they are not aware of. I will say that. Um, so he has something in common. What he and the other two guys, and the other two are Sam Harris. People know who Sam Harris is. He's one of these militant atheist guys. He's really got it in for what he, what in his term is radical Islam, or it's really just kind of Muslims in general. And this other guy, Andrew Sullivan, who's a gay Catholic man who, these are, honestly, these are all kind of centrist or right wing kind of people. Sullivan's a good enough writer that I have found him interesting for a long time. Even though, he was wrong on Iraq. I mean, he's wrong about everything, basically. He's really wrong. But interesting. Kind of just a heterodox sort of person, thinker, what have you. Weinstein was interesting because of his biology background. Sam Harris can be interesting on the topic of the mind. He is sometimes a decent social critic. I think he has a problem around Muslims. I kind of think he has a problem around people of color generally. Again, I think that these three guys are unwittingly, exponents of white supremacy in ways that they do not themselves understand, because they definitely don't understand themselves that way. But they all are saying kind of the same thing right now, which is, of course, the protests are good, police brutality bad. We're all broadly behind that, but why? We feel like debate is being stifled. Now, in the case of Sam Harris and Andrew Sullivan, they have a history of defending this guy, Charles Murray, who has basically, Charles Murray is the social scientist whose life's work is pretty much defunding the social safety net, because it is largely for the, or he says, it's largely for the benefit of people of color, and he believes in I'm just relaying what he thinks. It's so crazy, but this is literally this man's life's work is this. To say that we shouldn't really bother trying to promote better outcomes for people of color because there are genetic disparities that are reflected in IQ data. It's such an amazingly stupid idea that and this is like his whole thing. It's like multiple books. His big one was, I think, called The Bell Curve, I think, and just, there is social science, that's not my topic right now. Not my topic, whatever disparities there are in IQ. It's just a stupid thing to study, for one thing. And it's even dumber to talk about it. And it's even dumber and actually evil to advocate for an even more economically royalist and repressive regime than we have, because you're so racist, first of all, that you're excited to have found some IQ data that suggests, it's a sewer. But Sam Harris, who has, among some people, a decent reputation, and Andrew Sullivan, who used to have a decent reputation, have both defended this guy. To the hilt. That his intellectual freedom is threatened. It's important work he's doing, or then sometimes they want to say, like, it's not, I wouldn't do it, or I don't really, it's not necessarily important, but it's the principle of the thing. You have to allow inquiry, free inquiry. I'm getting derailed a little bit talking about Charles Murray. I don't want to talk about Charles Murray. I want to talk about this idea that there are things you can't say right now. Now, it is definitely the case that if you are offensive, that you can lose your job. But that's always been the case. You know, your job is not there for you to exercise your First Amendment rights. Your job is your job. In the realm of academia, um, I mean, the professors I know say that they feel free to do their work, and everyone they know and work with feels free to do their work, and there's nothing really to talk about. Like the poor, the cries of people denied, academics denied promotions or tenure, are always with us. And so when people sort of brandish like they know an academic who had a bad result, I don't give a goddamn about that. That is not a systemic problem. It's not happening in a way that threatens discourse. It just isn't. It just isn't. You know? And if you hold ideas objectionable enough to get yourself fired from your job in America, in the United States of America, in 2020, you're a piece of shit, and you deserve to lose your job. This is not the stifling of discourse. This is just what has always been true, which is that if you are offensive, you can lose your job. Now, I guess what is new is that there used to be a more of a bright line between your private conduct and your job, because not everybody was carrying a recording studio in their pocket. And that's, I think that's much to be bemoaned. I mean, I think that does kind of suck, that everything can be recorded. But there obviously is a good side to it, which is that we can more directly confront police violence and brutality because now everybody can see it. So that's a trade-off, I guess. But I would say, like if you hold like some kind of really fucked up heterodox opinion, and I hold a few myself, I would just say that, you could probably be an adult and be able to assess the audience that you're talking to and keep yourself out of hot water that way. Anyway, your job doesn't owe it to you to allow you to do absolutely anything in your private life, no matter how poorly it might reflect on the company. I mean, I feel a lot of solidarity with working people in general. I don't want anyone to lose their job for the most part, unless they're a complete shitbag. I feel a lot of, I want everyone to be able to make a living. And even people I don't agree with, I want them to be able to make a living. But even I, basically socialist TT, hold the position that your employer doesn't owe it to you to let you have a job if you embarrass the company. Try not to embarrass the company while someone's filming you. Duh. I guess sometimes, I'm sorry, I'm getting out of order, getting ahead of myself. Sometimes people bring up like this James Damore person who is a Google employee who thought it would be fun to circulate an email in which I guess he alluded to some social science that talked about how, women aren't as good at math or don't want to do math really. And so that's why. I guess he lost his job over that. I would point out that far from stifling debate, that's just a case of a guy, an edgelord, uh, espousing a useless opinion. Even if everything he said were true, that's fucking useless. What do you do with that? What are the real world ramifications of that? And almost definitely going to be offensive to your female coworkers. So yeah, you lose your job, dumb fuck. I don't feel bad for that guy. I don't care. That's not stifling. He can fucking set himself up in a $300 a month apartment and wear a sandwich board about how women shouldn't do math. I don't give a fuck. He can do that. This is a free country in that way. My point is that you're not owed a fucking good job, you know, where you can say or do anything and be as offensive as you want to be, basically be Diogenes, bathing in your own shit, and you still get to keep your job, your six-figure job. I mean, we didn't start the fire. That's just not the world we live in. And by no means does that harsh reality only cut that one way, you know? I mean, people get fired for all kinds of stuff. You know, you used to get fired for being gay. You know? I mean, I think broadly you should be able to do whatever you want to do in your private life. But, the vast majority of American adults find it pretty easy to avoid making or finding themselves in the situation of being filmed such that they end up making a video that embarrasses the shit out of their employer. Duh. Again, this has nothing to do with stifling discourse. That brings me to Sam Harris, and I just wasted an hour and a quarter of my life because I wanted to make sure that I was out. And by the way, that was out of a nearly 3-hour video where Sam Harris Society was going to talk about what's going on right now. And I'm at 17 minutes and 35 seconds, so I don't foresee wasting more than 20 minutes of your time. So I'm a bargain. Like and subscribe. But yeah, Sam Harris used all of that time. He used about 45 minutes clearing his throat. And to be sure, we all agree with the protests. Yes, police brutality is bad. And he kept saying, there's just going on the same thing. Oh, there's just so many things you can't say, and debate is stifled, and we're not free. We're not free to say what we must say, and, society's crumbling. Literally, he said, society is in danger of crumbling, and it ain't. It ain't. I went and got tacos tonight. Cabbagetown is quiet. They set a Wendy's on fire tonight, but there's not a single person on earth who gives a shit about that Wendy's being set on fire, or about any Wendy's being set on fire, and that includes people who own shares of Wendy's. Nobody gives a fuck about a Wendy's being set on fire. Nobody cares about that. Many people claim to care, but nobody cares about a Wendy's being set on fire. I'd like to I'm going to say that again. Let's sit with that for a minute. Let's really sit with that. Nobody gives a shit about a Wendy's being set on fire. Feels good. Feels good. Anyway, Sam Harris is sure the fabric of civilization is collapsing because there's so many things you can't say. I need like 45 minutes of that. And I'm like, all right, what the fuck are you going to just say it? I don't give a shit what you're going to say. Like, I don't care. I'm already pretty sure I'm not going to agree with you, or but then it ended up being so banal as like, he was like, it's pretty offensive to say this, but white people are also killed by the police. So it's like, dude, you don't have any understanding of what this shit is about at all. At all. You spend all this time acknowledging that acknowledging all the bad stuff about police, and then and this is going to be just a little inside baseball for those who really like Sam Harris. Our prophet, our apostle of steel manning, really believes you have to be better than taking on straw man versions of your opponent's arguments. He literally said, like, went on for 10 minutes about how you have to be fucking crazy to think that we should get rid of all the police. So that was a waste of time. But yeah, so because of that fucking ludicrous, meaningless, empty hash that he was talking about, he wanted me to draw the conclusion that free inquiry is under threat. Yeah, and Brett Weinstein and his wife talking about, well, where you're made to say something, soon you'll be made to think. So, invoking Orwell. It is so verklempt. And here's my real point. I'm coming around to it. 22 minutes in. That when you hear people talk about, like, free inquiry, and I feel like I can't express my opinion and we can't have conversations, note that the people saying that are definitely of European descent. Though there are black conservatives, they'll probably say it too, but I think it's less applicable. Like, you can't, like occasionally a person of European descent is told to shut up. Horrors. And I mean occasionally, that doesn't even happen very much. But when it does, worse things have happened today. But my point with all of this is that because it's so evident, it's so fucking self-evident, the cities are not collapsing. Civilization is perfectly safe. The bonds of society are not fraying. Nobody gives a shit about a Wendy's burning. You can still say anything you want in America, though just like yesterday and 5 minutes ago and 5 years ago and 50 years ago, you don't always get to keep your job no matter what you say or do. When you hear people make these arguments, this is not some sort of brave defense of intellectual freedom. It is the sound of panic at the threat, just a very mild threat to white supremacy. And it's people who thought they would never live long enough for things maybe to be in just slight danger of changing a little bit. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. And people for all I know, skulls are being cracked a mile from here right now. The helicopters are definitely circling. The cops are gooning out. It's definitely a huge overreaction to somebody burned a Wendy's and, oh my God, the interstate was blocked for 30 minutes. What would happen? I guess, like if the cops didn't come to the interstate at all, people would stay there. Would they stay there forever? Would it be like, okay, you can't use the connector anymore? Or would they be there for maybe a day or two, and then they'd be like, cool, we made our point? I don't pretend to know the answer to that question, but I think I can say that it would not be ruinously expensive to us as a society or to Atlanta as a city to spend 24 to 48 hours finding out the answer to that question. What if the cops didn't come? What if the response of the government was, This is a legitimate protest, a legitimate petition for the redress of grievances, and it's a little bit of an inconvenience. It's a little dramatic, but it's legitimate, and they've got a right to be out there. Now, obviously, that couldn't hold forever or even very long, but I'm not so sure that it would. And I do believe that trying it for 24 hours on a weekend, while everybody's kind of supposed to be at home anyway, would not spell the end of civilization. Just like it doesn't spell the end of civilization that in Minneapolis they're going to disband their police department and come up with something better, because the American police suck ass. You know, people are, people, I have their hackles up about that, and I don't know, you can hear the sirens. I hope everything's okay. But to me, that's just people who never thought they'd live long enough to see it. And they kind of liked it the old way. And so, hard to find anything to really say against people who are protesting for the right of people of color not to be murdered by the police. So you got to say some shit about intellectual freedom, free inquiry, red herrings, no truth to it at all, not what's happening. I hope this hasn't been a total waste of time. Good night.